to start recording. Okay, we're good there. And we'll get started. All right. So, treasure training 2021 here. And we will start with Tina.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tina, you're muted again.
Okay, let's start this over again. Hello, all. I am Tina Zweigett, the Director of Student Activities and Orientation here at Oberlin. And my part of this treasure training is going to be really quick because with the pandemic, so many things are not happening. So I just wanted to talk briefly about some of the ways that the Student Activities Office can help you and some of those things that might be hanging out there. One of them is deposits, how you deposit money into your student organization account. You do this through a miscellaneous deposit slip. Those are available in the student accounts office. And on that, you need to have your account name and the account number. And without those two things, we can't help you. But somebody, maybe you got money from something, I don't know what that would be, but, and you just want to get it deposited so that the student accounts office over in Bosworth can help you with that. Should someone give you a check, checks have to be payable to Oberlin College, not to the student organization. If one does come to this payable to the student org, then your treasurer would just sign it and just write on the back of the check payable to Oberlin College, and then turn it in with a miscellaneous deposit slip. If a group is, if an individual is wanting to donate money to your group, those are handled in a different way, and you should contact the alumni office for that. Or if you have questions, please just get in touch with me and I'll guide you through that. What happens with those donations when people give money to the college, they sometimes want credit for that, either for their taxes or just because they want credit as a philanthropy donation. So that's why it has to go through the alumni office. Primarily, my work with you will be on contracts. And as you all know, we are not permitted to have any outside guests on campus yet this year. My guess is that's going to continue throughout the entire spring semester. But you guys have done a great job. I am so proud of our students and all that we've done in being able to keep the pandemic at a minimal here at Oberlin. I know the town appreciates you. I'm so glad you're back on campus, even if I don't get to necessarily come up and give you big hugs like I would like to. But anyway, so no outside guests, we know that. But I've noticed this spring that a lot of virtual programs have really kicked into high gear, and I'm excited about that. In particular, the Black History Month, I've done many contracts for them. They have a lot of different programs going on. So I would encourage you to pay attention to those. And speaking of that, I would also encourage any student organization, when you do something, please make sure that you promote it and not just with your own group. And as promoting, also what you want to pay attention to, Campus Digest is really an amazing thing. If you just look at your email every morning, skim it, it's going to take you all of 30 seconds, but you will get all the information that you need on campus for that. It's going to tell, I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's important as I say this when I get a captive audience. The digest will tell you that, they'll remind you that you're up against a deadline for something. You'll hear about opportunities that are available. And then if we continue to advertise events that students are doing, we're really trying to push students to really pay attention to that. I just get all my information from there. Anyway, so a lot of virtual programs, but the same thing, many people were still paying them. And we want to get these contracts done 3 to 4 weeks in advance. If you don't have a contract, these people will not be paid. And that is what is very important. If the contract doesn't come from me or Sean Laubach, there's 2 of us in the Student Activities Office, most of you will be dealing with me. If it doesn't come from me, then that the institution has no commitment to these people and we owe them nothing. So you have put yourself personally out there. So we want to make sure that that does not happen for the most part. With SFC money, this is going to sound a little bit odd, that money can only be used for events that are on campus. I realize virtual is still considered on campus. What I'm talking about, and this won't really happen this year, is you can't really use SFC money to book a band down in Slow Train. It's all supposed to be on campus, but that's, again, kind of doesn't really matter right now. Offers, whenever, before we do a contract, normally we try to put out an offer just saying, thank you, two things. You can do an inquiry where you want to find out, you want this person to come and do a virtual lecture. What is it they usually ask for? And then you want to make sure you can get the SFC funding. You may already have it in your account. Otherwise, you need to ad hoc. So a lot of times what I tell students is you're certainly welcome to do an inquiry, just asking people what they would normally receive. And I will also say that then I pay a lot less than what they quote. Mainly because if I can get them for less, I do that. So SFC has more money to do more things. So, and then if in some cases people do want a formal offer, and that should really come from me on campus letterhead that we've committed to this. And then after that, we end up with having to write contracts. Now, to write a contract, I need a W-9, which I can provide you with a blank one, which you can send to the person. And then the elements of the contract. What's this person agree to do? How much do you agree to pay them for it? These are all going to be relatively simple this year because we're not getting into travel or anything. The only issue will be if you're trying to deal with an international organization. For example, if you have somebody from Ecuador who you want to come and do a virtual talk, we're still paying this person in Ecuador, and there are certain guidelines that we have to follow. And those, I kind of push you off onto the HR department because the staff over there know what the various agreements are with various countries. So just kind of, Does anybody have any questions about contracts? I know I'm skimming over this real quickly, but I'll work with you all individually. You'll send me a note, say I want to do this, and I'll very clearly outline what I need. So P cards. P cards are still available, but reminder, they have to be, you need pre-approval from SFC for whatever you're doing with it. What they cannot be used for are things like Lyft or Uber, but you're not going to do those anyway right now. And they can't be used for continuing charges. Like if you are looking at a web domain or something and you have to pay yearly for it, you need to work with Rick Snodgrass in the purchasing department. He is the most helpful human being I have ever met on this planet. He will sit down with you very calmly and carefully, go through everything. And in my case, with me, he goes over and over and over again. So he's very, very patient. So anyway, Rick Snodgrass is over in purchasing department, but you get the pre-approval to get a P card, and then that's where you get the P card itself. So again, you can order things online, and he'll walk you through it. If we have OB-BUY, we do things where we don't pay taxes then. So once you get the pre-approval, work with Rick and he will help you. Miscellaneous thoughts. Reimbursements. Should you spend money that you're allowed to spend through your SFC budget and you want to be reimbursed, you only have 60 days to turn in that reimbursement request. And that would go to OST with a request for payment and the original itemized receipt. I'm going to stress itemized again. It's got to be itemized. You have to very clearly say what all the things are. And again, do it quickly so you can get your money back. 60 days is, the controller's office has pretty much gotten firm on that. Faculty advisors, the only thing I want to say about that is I'm so thankful that we have all these wonderful faculty advisors, but I'll remind you that the faculty advisors don't spend your money, you do. They are wonderful resources and will help you with everything. But this is SFC money, and it will be spent the way that students want it to be spent. So, like I said, I would definitely use your faculty advisor because they certainly have contacts that the rest of us don't. But again, if you have any problems with that, let me know. Officer lists, I know that we sent out a thing the beginning of this semester because of, the sophomores are gone, the juniors are back, did you change your officers? So just make sure that if your officers change, that you do alert the student union office, because everybody's using us for those pieces of information. In the mailroom, there are a couple student organizations that actually have mailboxes in the mailroom. That would be WOBC, SFC, if you remember to pick up your mail. The Review, SIC, the Bike Co-op, and EXCO. So please remember to go down and pick up your mail. And the rest of you, your organization mail, if any hard mail comes to you, it goes to your liaisons mailroom account, the OCMR down there. So basically, quick run through. I just wanted to just give you an overall view of how we're here to help you. The student activities staff, we are here to work with you. I will help you plan any event you want to plan. I can work with you from trying to establish a budget through how do we spend that money, and how we can invite virtual people to campus. Really quick, does anybody have any questions? I'm seeing no, nobody's speaking up. I can't see everybody's faces, so I will assume that the answer is no overall. And then the last thing I will say to you in my departing shot is, remember, SFC and OST, both of those organizations are students just like you. They have exams, they have papers, they are busy. I would ask you to please respect their time. Try to get all your information into them when you want somebody paid. They always need a request for payment. They always need a copy of the contract. They always need a copy of a W-9. Those three things, they can't do anything without them. But I'm always more concerned. I think SFC and OST, both groups put in a lot of hours. And I would encourage you, if you have questions or comments, to write to their SFC and OST emails and not their personal ones. They're a great group of kids, but they, like you, are students. So I'm done. Thank you. And Tina Zweget, T. Zweget, you can see my name at the top there, T. Zweget at Oberlin.edu. I am here to help you with anything. Please let me know what I can do. Jasmine, do you have any other questions for me?
No, I think we're good. Thank you, Tina.
All right, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. All right, so there's gonna be a lot more information that we'll cover. So if you don't have questions yet, just save them for the end, and be able to go over some of those at the end there. So next, we're just gonna go through the different organizations that Tina touched on, SFC and OST, starting with SFC.
Hello, my name is Leo. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm on SFC. I am one of the ad hoc liaisons, and SFC is a team of 7 people, 7 voting members, and we have 1 voting member from OST, which is Francisca, and I'm sure you'll see his photo as we get into OST. And essentially, the main difference between SFC and OST is that SFC deals with sort of the policy side of things. So that would be, we get your funding requests and we review it. We make sure that it adheres to our policies, and we also restructure policies if we find any large inequities or bad things that are brought to our attention. It's our main job is also to relay relevant information to you all, so that when you go in to request funding, you're not just throwing yourself into the dark, essentially. So yeah, we allocate the $1.7 million student activity fund, which I encourage all of you to take advantage of, because you all pay for it in your tuition. It's something like $400 taken out of every tuition statement per Oberlin student. So definitely get those budget requests in so we can give you that money back for things. We serve as liaisons for a club council system, and the club council system is essentially, there's like 5, 7, 8 different club councils, and they are essentially an aggregate of all of the different organizations under one umbrella genre. So we have the religious council that would have like Hillel, Chabad, Muslim Student Association. Then there's cultural orgs that would be things like Abuswa or SASA, and etc. And each SFC officer, so all 7 of us, are in charge of anywhere from 2 to 3. And that means it's our job to be your liaison. That means you're supposed to kind of have meetings with us, and we're supposed to give you all the information you need to make sure that your budgets are approved and don't violate any main policy things. And yeah, I guess in big bold, we don't handle any payments or transactions after the allocation is decided. That is when OST kicks in, and they're the ones that are doing all of that work.
Awesome. So yeah, so that's where I cue in here. So like we said, OST, Office of Student Treasurer, are the ones who you go to for the actual payments and the transactions and all the forms that you need to turn in order to actually get the money and be able to spend it. So you go to SFC, turn in the forms to be able to get approved for the use of funds, but you can't do anything until you see us. So I'm Jasmine Mitchell. I'm one of the assistant treasurers at OST. We have a head treasurer, 2 assistant treasurers, a community coordinator, and a controller. The controller is the one who you'll have most interactions with. Isaiah is the one who will be processing all of the forms that come in. So if you're turning in a P-card form via email, obviously, he will be the one that processes it, as in puts it into our OST database to be able to have myself or Malika, who is another assistant treasurer, or Francisco, who is the head treasurer, to look over it to make sure everything is correct, to make sure you have enough money in your account. We then approve it, and we're the only ones who can approve it for you to then be able to actually use your money. So just remember the names and the faces of the people, because more of the names and the faces, but we are the people that you're going to be seeing in the office hours, but just know our responsibilities are different and the things that we can or cannot do. So like we kind of alluded to already, we enforce the policy that SFC sets. We cannot and will not override any SFC decisions in terms of the allocation of your money or the decisions that are made. We are just responsible for allowing you to use those funds once they are allocated to you. We process those forms so that way you're able to use it, and we provide you account numbers. So your account number specific to your organization will commonly be seen, and we'll go through this a little bit later in terms of forms, which is the index. The names are just a little bit different on forms and stuff, but we'll get into the specifics later. We also keep the file of all the records. So if there's any discrepancies about how much you set in a contract and how much you're ad hocing for, or how much you think you have in your account, we have all of those records. They're all saved. And that's something that you can reach out to us to be able to access. So that's just a brief overview. We're going to get into more specifics about OST forms and all of that later. But moving forward, we're just going to be talking about this training. So I'll bounce this back to Leo.
Yeah, so this is a great question. This is a long training. Typically it's 2 hours, and usually we are able to offer pizza. Fortunately, good news, it's gonna be a little shorter this time because there's less policies to go over. Unfortunately, there's no pizza. But to incentivize you as to sort of why you're here because you were elected to be the treasurer. You have a huge responsibility on your shoulders, and clearly you've all earned that responsibility. But with that responsibility, that means that you are liable for any misuse of funds. So that means if you accidentally mess up a form for a payment of $1,000, you're liable for that $1,000. So that's why we really want to offer this training, to make sure that you understand sort of what you're getting yourself into, and also to offer as much support and cushioning to make sure that nothing goes awry down the road. So essentially, the main thing to be aware of is if you have any questions, always contact your SFC liaison. And also, if you have any questions with form filling is perhaps the more important one. Please make sure, don't hesitate to ask OST for any help on that. We're gonna go over sort of how to properly fill out the forms. It's gonna be a lot of information at once, and hopefully that just gets your mind churning on it. But there's no expectation that you're fully gonna comprehend all the different forms right after this meeting, and that's totally fine. But we're just hoping to get that conversation started. Yeah, same thing for the treasurer contract. You have to sign this contract, which states that you're going to be liable for the allocations of your organization. Big, bold italics. If you misuse allocated funds, it's coming out of your own pocket. I think, obviously, if there's any large, or actually not even if there's any large, if there's any fault on SFC or OST, as in your treasurer misused their meeting time and didn't divulge very important sensitive information that could have prevented you from potentially making a mistake that would cause a misuse of funds, SFC will remedy that. That's not going to be on you, but we're going to do our best to give you all the information, which means that there is the expectation on you that because you signed this treasurer's contract, you're going to listen to that information and you're going to apply it properly. But definitely, if you feel like you're missing any information, let us know, because that's totally on us, and we'll try to remedy that as soon as we can.
Also, just the contract, we can put in the chat, but also it's on the SFC website.
Okay, and actually, speaking of the SFC website, Jasmine, do you think I could share my screen to show the website, just to show the difference between ad hoc and reallocation?
Yes, absolutely. Give me one sec.
I say, no worries, thank you.
And
right,
let me give you access.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you should
All right,
be
sick.
good too.
So the slide said, what's the difference between reallocations and ad hocs? Ad hocs is asking for money that you don't have yet. Reallocation is asking to move money around that you already have. So the ad hoc tab is right here on the SFC website, which is just oberlinsfc.com. You'll go to the ad hoc tab. It'll explain how to ad hoc allocations and ad hoc request forms. Essentially, how to ad hoc is you're going to submit a budget to us, and your SFC liaison point person will send you a budget template that's really helpful. It will say where we need the links, what kind of links, and how to structure your wording. Once you fill that budget out for, let's say you want to hold, you want to bring an artist in for a virtual talk, you would fill out the form that we will send to you, the template, and then you're going to submit it right down here to ad hoc request form. That's going to take you to a Google document, and you're just going to fill that out. What's going to happen is once you submit that Google document, SFC is going to receive it on Thursday, and then we review it on Sunday. If it's a complicated ad hoc, let's say you're requesting a lot of money with a lot of different itemized budgets or itemized lines, we might ask you to come in on Zoom on that Sunday to have a 15-minute conversation with us, just so that we can make sure we're not missing anything. And then we vote on it. If it's a really simple budget, we'll still vote on it Sunday, but you're not going to have to come in for any Zoom. In both cases, you will hear back from us in 8 days from that Sunday. So that would be a Monday, if that makes sense. Sometimes we're able to push it out a little bit faster, but it really depends on how swamped OST is. And like Tina said, we're all students, and OST works so incredibly hard to push these budgets out. So that's why we ask to give us 8 days to give that budget back to you. Another key thing to note about ad hocs is because if you think about it, so it takes us 8 days to get your results back, and it's going to take you about a week to fill that budget out. So that means we ask that you please start your ad hoc process 2 weeks before you actually need the money in your account. And we encourage you to do 3 weeks as well, because then that gives you time to go to SFC office hours and just get a double preliminary check, which means that we'll just like give you the go ahead and say that when you submit this budget, it's going to be passed. Because the only reason we wouldn't fund an event is if it breaks a policy. So that's what ad hoc is. Reallocation, you just click on this tab. And reallocation, like I said, is just trying to move money around. So let's say you requested $1,000 to bring a virtual speaker in, but they canceled, but you still have that money in your account, right? You were funded for it. So this reallocation form is really straightforward. It says just sort of why you weren't able to spend that money, where you want to put that money to next, and we'll get back to you within 3 days. That's the difference. There we go. Yeah.
Awesome. So let me just go back and share my screen so we can keep on moving. All right. We went through ad hoc. Okay.
So here are all the club councils. There are 11. I think I said 7 or something like that. But like I said, essentially club councils is just sort of the group that your organization has been aggregated under. If you feel like your group doesn't belong in the club council you were assigned, let your SFC point person know and we'll switch you around. The reason we have club councils is because it makes it easier for SFC members to keep track of all the different treasurers for all the different orgs and make sure you all get the information you need. But it also is hoping to encourage cross collaboration, especially if we think about organizations like external performers. Because in the past, what we've had is sometimes one org will try to bring in the exact same artist as another org, and they'll submit the same budget, but like for separate things. So it reduces redundant spending, but it also allows for bigger events to happen. So if we think about like Drag Vault, something that would request like upwards of $200,000. The great thing about that is if other organizations within community engagement or within external performers are like, hey, we want to offer our support and we want to offer our own money to that to SFC, that looks great because it says that there's going to be a larger reach for the audience. Because the main thing with SFC is we want to make sure that everyone is getting to access the money that they have to pay to the student activity account. So if your event can demonstrate through cross collaboration that you're going to reach more organizations, that's like a huge plus to get more funds, if that makes sense. Oh yeah, we're not requiring meetings this year. So it says all treasurers are required to attend 2 meetings. It's not required because we sometimes feel that in these large meetings, people don't ask the questions they want to ask just because it's a really large meeting and it's really short. So what we're doing instead is instead of large meetings, we're doing one-on-one conversations with each treasurer. And these one-on-one conversations are super, super important because especially in this Corona OB Safe pandemic time, there's so many new policies coming out. Like in last fall or this fall, there were like 3 different policies that came out within 2 weeks, which means we had to like constantly go back to different treasurers and say like, hey, I'm sorry, you actually can't do this, or you now have this option. So it's best to just hop on this first one-on-one meeting. And if any changes come up, we're going to request to have another one-on-one meeting with you. And we really hope that you take us up on that offer. Okay. Prohibited items. We can't give you, okay, anything that explodes, alters your state of mindset, but alcohol is, we can fund alcohol for religious organizations, but the alcohol has to be purchased and signed for by your faculty advisor. In terms of things you wear, we actually can fund things that you wear as long as it's not a gift. So what a gift is something that you keep. So we can fund like jerseys that don't have people's specific names on them, and that can be reused by the organization as years go on, but we can't fund anything that's tailored to you, which means that you would keep it and it would count as a gift. Another thing is we can fund gifts as payment for other artists or people you're bringing in. So while we can't fund something that says like Leo Heidi for me, what we could fund is some type of like edible bouquet of flowers or something like that for a visiting professor to say thank you to them. That's totally fine because it's not going directly to an Oberlin student. And other things in terms of like merchandise and things like that, we can fund merchandise that this is where it gets complicated. We can fund merchandise that could be a gift, as in you keep it, but that merchandise has to have Oberlin branding on it and it can't be personalized to you. So that means we could fund a water bottle that has the OB squirrel on it if you want to give it out to your teammates through an organization. But if it says your name on it, like if it said Jasmine on it and I was giving it to Jasmine, we wouldn't be able to fund that. These specific things are really only applicable to organizations that would qualify kind of under the athletic club council. So whoever your liaison is, I would encourage you to reach out to them because they would have more specific information on what your organization can or can't purchase as a gift. The last one is anything that violates OB Safe guidelines, we can no longer fund. So that means if you, like Tina said, we can't physically bring in outside performers. We can't have you go outside of campus, so we can't fund any day trips or retreats outside of campus. We also can't fund anything that was not approved by student union. And that means that if you want to have an event that has more than 10 people outside, you have to get student union approval before you submit the budget. Because last year, what we saw a lot was that people would submit budgets for like 11 people to be outside, but student union hadn't approved it yet, so we couldn't touch the budget until there was that approval already set. And the student union OB Safe guidelines, your SFC point person will go over with you in depth during your one-on-one meetings.
Can I just ask a quick question about our SFC liaison? Is that the same person who it was last semester, or is that being changed?
No, it's the same person as last semester. SFC liaisons change every like broader calendar year. So it would be every 2 semesters, but now it's every 3 semesters because there's the summer.
All right, thank you.
All right, so rollover. Basically, just broad idea is that money that your specific student organization has been gifted that you are able to then carry over to the next semester. What rollover does not include is SFC allocated funds from your budget. So if you were gifted $1,000 from an alum and went through the process with Tina and all the rest, and it's in your account, that can roll over from spring of 2021 to the summer to the fall and all of that. That is specific cases. And so you'll be able to talk to your SFC point person if you have any questions, and obviously OST if you want to get other specifics to make sure that you're doing everything within policy. But just as a blanket term, that's what it generally is, but does not apply to your SFC budgeted allocations. forms. So there's a lot of forms. So just in terms of just understanding the process, this would happen after, you know, you've gotten your budget approved or your ad hoc approved. You've received an email from OST with your marked up budget or ad hoc saying like, here's, you know, the amount that you were approved of, marked up just meaning that in full, if you requested for $500, you're either you know, approved in full or a specific amount instead of 500. Once that's been emailed to you, then you're at this process of forms. So there's the request for payment, local vendor form, transportation form, P-card form. The ones you're going to use the most are going to be request for payment and P-card forms. All your forms must be signed both by the organization treasurer, or excuse me, organization advisor and your authorized treasurer. Authorized means that you went to one of these great virtual trainings. And if you are not the authorized treasurer, you won't be able to use your funds. There's a little bit of a different kind of mechanism that's working this semester because a lot of your advisors either aren't physically on campus or aren't in a space to like physically sign a paper. So you can either have them virtually sign it through PDF, or you can have them have a screenshot of them, you know, just in words saying that they approve the use of your funds through an email. Whichever your choice, it's totally up to you. We just need to have all of that information compiled when you are sending it to OST already done. Ignore the second bullet. Under regular circumstances, you would submit the form to Wilder 316. We are not there. Do not send anything hard copy. It will never be processed. Email it to us at the OST email. It's ost@oberlin.edu. Very simple, very straightforward. Any forms that are missing signatures, documentation, or receipts will be considered a problem form, and it just slows down the process of either you or your performer or speaker being paid. Those forms will be emailed back to you detailing what is missing or what needs to be done. And until you're able to resolve the problems, they will not be processed. So that's why it's really important, especially if you're on a tight turnaround, to just make sure that you have everything covered. Make sure that if you're trying to get a reimbursement, you have your itemized receipt and you have either a picture of it or something that you're emailing everything in one email, because if it's a problem form, then it just slows down the process for you and for us. And just once again, reemphasizing that you're responsible for knowing your organization's information, such as your org code. If you do not know your organization's code, then ask OST, we will give it to you. But please, that's like the most vital information when it comes to filling out any forms, is knowing that what your organization codes is. And so all of that to say that please plan ahead for your events as much as literally possible, because like has been mentioned before, we are still students, and so we are on specific schedules. A lot of times we'll try to accommodate you all because we understand how important these events are to you, but we still have our own personal schedules that we also have to attend to as well. So please be respectful of our time. Please be respectful of the timelines that it takes to get things done, and plan ahead so that way we don't have any issues. So the first form is the request for payment form. This is, there's an electronic copy on the SFC website. If you just go to oberlinsfc.com, go to OST and under forms, you'll find it right there. There's the copy that you see right here that tells you what to fill in and everything like that. But there's also a copy that's blank for you to be able to fill out for yourself. These would cover reimbursements. So if you paid for something and you have in your organization's budget money to cover the specific item or whatever it was to cover that, you can be reimbursed. You would fill out the form. Your treasurer would be the requester, you would be the payee, and you would fill out the rest of the information as such. If you're bringing a speaker, performer, this is going to be the case that you're going to be using the RFP the most. in which case, again, the requester is the treasurer, the payee is the speaker. You also need other information like a W-9, a contract, when it comes to paying speakers and performers, which is additional forms that you can either get from Tina directly in terms of contract and W-9 or on the SFC website. Obviously, paying for a hotel and tournament entry fees would be the normal situation for the use of a form like this, but obviously not in our current situation. When it comes to reimbursements, especially if you have a lot of receipts, just go ahead and just compile them into one doc instead of multiple attachments. It makes it just easier for the processing of your information. And you can just take a picture of them and go through that way. The next one is a local vendor form, or DPO. This is a bit of a different process. This form, you would just specifically just reach out to Tina about, because this is a bit of a different process under our current environment, because of the fact that this would require actual people eating, and that's an unmasked task. So this form under normal circumstances would just be something that you would get from our office, that myself or Malika or Francisco, the head treasurer, would sign and get your organization advisor and treasurer before being used. And so that way you would be able to purchase food from any of the local vendors in town, such as Ben Franklin, Quick and Delicious, Fev, IGA, etc. Under the current circumstances, there's a lot of different kind of layers that you would have to go through in terms of approval through the Student Activities Office, just to get to the point where they would be okay with you facilitating the purchase of food, because of just safety guidelines and cleanliness and all the rest. So if you have a question about a DPO form, reach out to OST or your SFC person, your SFC point person first, to get some specific information about that, because it's not as easy as the other forms. P-card form. The P-card form is basically just a credit card. It's a form so that way you can purchase items a bit easier than a request for payment form. That way, when it comes to like specific items or an online membership, you're able to just purchase it, turn the card back in, and keep going, instead of having to go through the process different ways. And so in order to use it, and then also be able to make sure that we're following IRS guidelines, you need to have all of the original itemized receipts. And so, for example, for Amazon, which is where most student organizations are purchasing their items from, you don't want the page that they send you as the confirmation email. You would want the one that says like invoice, for instance, because that's itemized. It says how many items you purchased at what price, and all the taxes and all that stuff. It also records the date, time, place, and all of that, all in one receipt. So just be mindful that your receipts cover all that information, because then it's going to turn into a problem form and slow down that process again. So when it comes to a P-card form, when you're turning it in, please give some wiggle room between the time you're requesting and the time you really need to use it. Having like a day in between, in most cases, is not enough time. So please just plan as much ahead as you can possibly afford. And the P-card, like all the other forms, are on the SFC website. Okay, so this is what the physical problem form would have looked like if we were doing things in person, but that's not what it's going to look like. It's just going to be an email. But for common mistakes, that looks like forgetting to put the T number or the identification number on the RFP form at the top, or you haven't attached the W-9 when you're submitting an RFP for a speaker, or not submitting the contract along with the W-9 and the RFP. You don't have your org code on the form. You haven't provided enough detail about the business purpose. If you just say food, that's not specific enough. You wouldn't be able to get SFC's approval for that type of like vague nature, kind of explaining the to be allocated money for that. So we can't process a form that's vague either. Just we need specifics. How many items you're purchasing, how, what specifically the item is, stuff like that. And then also like proof of payments or receipts are also some common things that are missed. But yeah, so that is that. Is there any questions? There's a lot of information there. That's a lot of information. This is all on the SFC website. This specific presentation and all of what Leo and I have said will also be recorded and uploaded on the SFC website if you want to go back. But right now, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, sorry. I feel like I have like a million questions. I don't want to
Yeah.
like charge you with all of them.
No, please do, because this is being recorded. So like the questions that you have probably are questions that other people have. So if we can knock them out now, that's best.
Okay, cool. So like I guess our first step then like ad hocing for money, like after figuring out like talking to people and figuring out like, okay, like I'm with Dragball, and so like we're reaching out for like the semester and figuring out like how much performers cost. So like after figuring out their price, our first step is to ad hoc and be like, okay, like we would request this much money.
Yep.
Or okay, cool. And then
Yeah,
so like
exactly.
I kind of like talked to Tina about this a little bit about like when we're ad hocing, are we ad hocing for both semesters or just one? She had suggested doing spring and summer in one budget proposal thing.
Right. So it's totally up to you. Typically what we would do is you can add, so there's ad hocs and then there's budgets. Budgets are semesterly, so you could ad hoc an entire budget and that would just be your budget for all of spring, all of summer. You can even ad hoc all the way out into the fall if you set dates if you want to. But we're recognizing though that because OB safe policies it seems like they change every month. We're encouraging people to just ad hoc as things continue to change, because it's a lot of stress on treasurers to have to come up with a year-long budget and then it all gets scrapped because of some new corona policy.
Totally, that makes sense. Because I know when we were talking to Tina, she was saying like this semester we can't bring anyone in, but like she seemed like it was possible that we could do that in the summer. So I guess just wait on doing in-person things on our ad hoc for that then.
Yeah, what I would recommend that you do is if you contact all of the artists that you're thinking about and say like, hey, we might be able to have you in the summer, could you give us a soft honorarium price? You can add that into your ad hoc. SFC will receive it. SFC will vote on the contingency that it is all allowed in the summer. We won't submit it back to you and we won't submit it to OST yet, but when the summer rolls around and we have new information on if that budget could work, if it's already approved, we'll just send it straight away to OST to mark it up, and then you'll get that as soon as the policy changes.
Okay, and then how does that work with contracts? Like if our budget isn't approved, like how do we know that we're sending a contract out to a person? Like if we don't know if we can have the money to do that, then. Yeah,
so what you do is you have to get your budget approved first before you can get a contract. So what would happen in this case, if you were trying to plan that far ahead into the summer, you could ask people what their honorarium prices are, compile a budget, and at the top of the header it'd be like, this budget is contingent on if we're allowed to do all of this stuff. SFC will receive it, we'll vote on it, and then once we send that budget back to you, and we would only send it back to you once we have the relevant information from student union as to if we can vote on it at all. Once you get that notification, you go to Tina, and it takes Tina anywhere from about a week to 2 weeks to draft up a contract, and then she sends the contract out to the artists.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Is like you guys had talked about the idea of like merch things and like that we can't have that out. I guess you had also mentioned like talking specifically to our liaisons about that. Like one of the things that we were thinking of is like makeup. It's not necessarily something that like you can return back and share amongst people. So is that something that I should just bring up specifically with whoever is in charge? Or okay, cool.
Yeah, I think makeup too. I would contact your point person because makeup falls in kind of a strange category, because you can have a makeup artist there doing makeup for different people, and that's totally fine. And I also know the SIC gives out makeup kits. So because Dragball isn't just a performance, right, there's also the educational aspect of it. I do think there's wiggle room to potentially give out makeup kits if you structure it the same way that SIC requests their makeup kits.
Cool, thank you.
Anything else?
Should we be, I don't know where my microphone is, I'm sorry. Should we be like writing budgets for next spring, or not next spring, but like this, what the heck, summer? Or even, or the next year, or any time, or is that like later?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What I would probably suggest that so we're gonna, in your one-on-one meetings, we're gonna give you the date of April 9th, which is the first draft of budgets for the summer semester. That being said, budgets at this point are completely optional because everything's changing, and it's a lot of pressure to put on treasurers, quite frankly, to have them schedule out the entire semester and all the events. So what we would typically, or what I'm gonna encourage, and I think this is what other SFC members, their policy stance is, ad hoc for every semester, so beginning of summer, fall, spring, it takes about a month for SFC and OST to return from break and get back on the bandwagon and like be able to churn budgets out properly. So what I would recommend is before summer semester starts, I would try to submit a budget for just the first month of summer semester if you plan on having anything happen in the first month of summer semester. And that means that when you return to campus, starting day one of summer semester, you have that money in your account for the first month to do what you want to do in the first month. And then I would encourage you to ad hoc after that, just as new things come up, so you're not forced to plan out the entire semester this semester. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I would just add, especially if it's like speakers and stuff, those are like the easier ones to just knock out. So that way, especially when it comes to turning in forms for that you've already been allocated for through a budget, it makes it a whole lot easier to just turn in an RFP instead of like going to schedule an appointment through ad hoc, writing up the ad hoc, then submitting, waiting to hear after, you know what I mean? So it just, certain things, especially, it makes it a little bit easier if you do it through the budget process. It doesn't mean that it will be any slower through ad hoc. It just kind of saves a little bit more of your own time, especially since you wouldn't be in classes during that time period. So that way you can coordinate through to speakers and stuff like that, because it requires a lot more forms and stuff like that, contracts, W-9s. It would be easier for yourself as a treasurer, just so you're not, overextending yourself, to have that through your budget. And so that way, when it comes to the week that you need it, or the week ahead that you need it, you'll already just have to turn in the RFP, and you won't have to worry about the rest of like logistical kind of issues.
I guess to surmise, just for everyone, if you plan on doing something in the first month of next semester or fall semester, whatever that semester is, submit a budget this time around, and then feel free to ad hoc for everything after that.
And especially with how things are changing, it's probably the safest thing for you to budget for. That'll still be a thing afterwards, like virtual speakers and stuff like that. So, yeah. Any other questions from people?
I have a question about P cards.
Mhm.
So I'm off campus. How does that work?
Thank
Can
you.
I do
Yeah.
that?
Thank you for asking that. I meant to say that in the main presentation, so thank you for asking that. So if you are your organization's treasurer but aren't, on campus to pick it up, that's totally fine. You would still be the one to sign the form and, submit everything in. You would just indicate who would be the one to pick it up when it comes to the process of after emailing to Rick. So for instance, you would submit you would get the money, all of that SFC side. When it comes to the OST side of things, fill out your form properly, have all your information in, you're gonna email it to OST. Isaiah will process the form. It'll be in our database. I will clock in one day, process the form, sign it and approve it, and then I will email Rick, Rick Snodgrass in the purchasing office. When I email Rick that the form has been approved, I will CC you. And so that is a way to connect you and Rick together. But if you aren't the one that's physically picking up that form, you would just respond to that email saying, actually, I'm off campus, but this person in my organization will be picking it up instead. So no worries there. It just, at that end part of the process is where it would just change, and you would just communicate that accordingly. Thank you for asking that question.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, well, oh, sorry. No, you're good, please.
Sorry, I know I'm totally like asking a million things. Do we reach out to our point person, or are they going to reach out to us for the one-on-one meetings?
They're supposed to reach out to you by Monday. And if
Okay.
they don't, you just email SFC, just be like, I didn't hear anything, and we'll sort it out.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all for your questions. Before you go, so I'm gonna stop the recording.